from a structural standpoint, 40% of this town in Texas's budget is dedicated to this police force. And, they did nothing. It appears to really, or they were not willing to risk anything in trying to stop this guy.
Despite having the requisite training for this exact situation. New York Times reporting like 16 hours ago that they've obtained some documentation that cops in Uvalde had done preparations for a school shooter situation, and they still were seemingly wildly inadequate in their response, if not negligent.
And I vacillate, and again, we'll talk more with Heather about this. I vacillate going back and forth between, sort of, obviously there should be anger at the police, but there also should be sort of like a broader lesson, which is, the whole notion of like good guys with the guns, like, they don't want to get shot either, because this guy's holding multiple, not quite military grade. The ammo-sexuals don't need to email in, but enough that the these weapons intimidate cops, and so it is that part of the lesson. There should be anger at the police. There should be anger that these type of resources are dedicated to the police, despite the fact that there's obvious limitations in what they can do. I don't know if they had half that budget and that other half of that budget went into all sorts of better social services, maybe that doesn't happen. Who knows? But certainly, if you have that budget and put the rest into social services, the town itself would be just in a better place. But it also just shows that, like, the whole theory that you can inhibit these type of shootings without having to get rid of the weapon, which is, turns out to be the material issue, right? That person goes in there with a gun. Those cops aren't out there waiting for an hour. If that guy goes in there with, even like a 22 or, a handgun, it's just unbelievable. But
yeah, well,
I don't know which one of these clips you want to play.
We should do one. I mean, that fits into what we're talking about.
Play clip number 1.
Inside those classrooms.
But don't
No, it's okay. We can just preface it really quickly then, before we get into it. Here, it's okay. Here is Wolf Blitzer on with Texas Lieutenant Chris Olivares, speaking about the Uvalde shooting, and Wolf Blitzer is basically asking him why, as reports indicate, it took at least an hour for cops to, quote, engage with the shooter in the school, even though there were conflicting reports, and it seems like a CYA situation where cops were telling the media that they had engaged with him previously. Now we're not sure.
You don't know how they're using words like engaged or contained. It's all lies.
Yeah, I mean, they make it as squishy as possible for that very reason. And this response from this Texas officer, or lieutenant, I should say, is enraging, frankly.
Or teachers that were inside those classrooms.
But don't current best practices, Lieutenant, call for officers to disable a shooter as quickly as possible, regardless of how many officers are actually on site?
Correct. The active shooter situation, you want to stop the killing, you want to preserve life, but also one thing that, of course, the American people need to understand is that officers are making entry into this building. They do not know where the gunman is. They are hearing gunshots. They are receiving gunshots. At that point, if they proceeded any further, not knowing where this suspect was at, they could have been shot. They could have been killed. And at that point, that gunman would have the opportunity to kill other people inside that school. So they were able to contain that gunman inside that classroom.
Pause it. I'm sorry. So when they say contained the gunman inside the classroom, what happened was, yeah, they did. That That gunman stayed in that classroom and he killed everybody in that
Well, also
classroom as they were watching Moana.
They use active voice and say they contained him. No, he went in and locked himself in that room.
Yeah, right. Oh, wow, we made sure that he didn't go elsewhere as he was on his murdering spree. That was that. You can keep going, but it's just like they frame the language so favorable in their direction. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And there's been about a half a dozen times so far where the police story has evolved at different times, and it to a certain extent you can understand there's going to be a lot of misinformation at the beginning of these things, and there's a lot of confusion, but it's also quite clear that they were just trying to cover their asses because they realized at one point, like, we did nothing. Nothing. And I think they just, I don't know what they assumed would happen, but they did nothing.
And to your point about that you were making earlier about the reasoning for them not wanting to follow protocol and actually attempt to stop the shooter. One, they've had training, according to the New York Times, in these kinds of situations, which they just did not follow because they were scared for their lives. Why were they scared for their lives? It was because of the weaponry that the shooter had. And we're going to hear a lot of solutions proposed, but guarantee one of them is going to be, well, now the cops all have to have AR-15s. Like, we gotta match them, right? Because if they were outgunned and they were scared for their lives, even though it's their job, they're literally paid to be public servants. I understand it's scary. Of course they're fearful for their lives. That makes total sense. But at the same time, there needs to be a multi-pronged approach to this to fix things, which is, one, to ban these assault rifles outright and have a gun buyback program where it's lucrative for people to sell back their AR-15s or whatever they have to the government and ban future sales of them. And then secondly, we need to look at what cops even do for our society, because this whole good guy with a gun thing, as you say, Sam, we have definitive proof here what actually went down, and they failed miserably. And you see these videos of the parents wailing outside in pain and in agony of this school as the cops are standing around outside. Like, this should be a moment of reckoning, but I have very little faith that that will be the case.